The forest of Elderglen was not a place for wanderers. Even the wind held its breath beneath the tall, twisted trees. Shadows moved without reason, and strange whispers rode the mist. But tonight, a pale figure in a crimson cloak walked with purpose. Countess Valoria of the Eastern Fangs was no wanderer. She was a vampire of noble blood, and she had come seeking power. The ruined chapel stood like a broken crown at the forest's heart, its black stones covered in ivy and time. Moonlight poured through the cracks in its roof, painting silver lines across the cracked altar inside. This place had been forgotten for centuries, sealed by ancient spells. But Valoria had studied the forbidden texts. She knew how to break the seal. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small blade carved from obsidian. With a sharp breath, she sliced her palm and let her blood drip onto the altar. The moment the first drop touched the stone, the ground trembled. Cold air rushed through the chapel, snuffing out her torch. The moon above turned red, as if watching in warning. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice came from behind her, low, rough, and familiar. Valoria turned to find Kellen, the werewolf alpha, standing in the doorway. His eyes glowed gold, and his long coat was soaked from the forest dew. He looked like a hunter, but not hers. "This place was sealed for a reason," Kellen said, stepping closer. "There are things buried here that should never rise again." Valoria raised her chin proudly. "You think your old legends frighten me? I came for what belongs to my kind." Kellen's expression tightened. "You don't understand. That altar doesn't hold power. It holds something far worse." A strange sound echoed through the ruins, like the growl of something deep beneath the earth. The blood on the stone shimmered darkly. The air grew thick, and even Valoria's sharp senses dulled for a moment. "What have I awakened?" she whispered, more to herself than him. Kellen stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of the silver dagger at his belt. "You've broken the veil. Something ancient is stirring now. The last time it walked the world, it bathed cities in blood." Still, Valoria didn't move. She stared at the altar, her hand still bleeding. Her pride burned too strong, too deep. "I don't run from shadows," she said. "Let it rise. I will control it." Kellen shook his head, his voice quiet and grim. "Then you've made your choice. But when the curse falls, don't say you weren't warned." And as the wind howled outside, the chapel seemed to breathe cold, alive, and hungry. Days passed since the blood touched the altar. Elderglen's skies had not turned blue since then. The moon stayed hidden, and the stars flickered like dying candles. A heavy silence filled the land, like the world was holding its breath. Countess Valoria returned to her manor in the hills, but she did not rest. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Her thirst had changed. Animal blood no longer satisfied her. Even the rich blood of humans felt thin, empty. Her skin, once smooth and cold like marble, now burned with strange heat. Her eyes were darker, sharper. She was changing. But it wasn't power. It was something else, something worse. Then came the dreams. Each night she saw a giant wolf chained beneath a mountain of bones. Its fur was black as shadow, and its eyes glowed like twin moons. The beast whispered her name again and again, its voice deep and cold. "Valoria." She awoke each time breathless and sweating, something she hadn't done in centuries. Fear was a forgotten feeling, but now it had returned. And with it came a deeper hunger, one that twisted her from the inside. She tried to ignore it, tried to feed again, but when she took a young man from the village, her bite didn't stop. She drank too deep, drank until there was nothing left. She stared at the lifeless body in her arms, heart racing with confusion. This wasn't hunger. It was something else. That night, Helen found her again. She was standing at the edge of the dark river near her manor, trying to wash the blood from her hands. The wind rustled the trees behind her, and his voice came like thunder. "You see it now, don't you?" She turned slowly. Kellen stepped into the moonlight, a deep scar across his neck from an old battle. His eyes were softer this time, but filled with warning. "It's not power you've taken," he said. "It's a curse. The thing under the altar, it marked you." Valoria said nothing. She just stared at her own reflection in the black water. Her eyes were no longer just red. They pulsed with something wild. "I can help," Kalen said. "But you must come with me. Now, there's a place in the north, the Temple of Old Howls. They kept the knowledge of what you've stirred." Valoria looked up at him. For the first time, there was no pride in her voice, only pain. "What am I becoming?" Kalen stepped forward and held out his hand. "Something neither vampire nor wolf. But if we don't stop it, you'll lose yourself." She hesitated. Then she took his hand. The cursed moon broke through the clouds above, watching them both, and somewhere deep in the forest, the chained wolf laughed. The journey north was long and cold. Valoria and Kellen traveled through snow-covered woods and across frozen rivers. The land was quiet, too quiet. Villages they passed were empty. Windows broken, doors hanging open. It was as if something had frightened the people away. Kalen said little. He walked ahead, cloak wrapped tight, always watching the shadows. Valoria followed in silence, her strength fading with each step. The hunger inside her grew stronger. She felt it scratching at her chest, whispering things she couldn't understand. At night, they lit small fires, careful not to draw attention. Valoria didn't sleep. She stared into the flames, feeling the beast inside her stirring. Sometimes she looked at Kalen and wondered what it would feel like to taste his blood. But the thought made her feel sick, not from shame, but from fear. On the fifth night, the sky turned red. Not the soft red of dawn, but a burning, angry glow. Kalen stopped in the middle of a narrow path between two cliffs. He turned to her with serious eyes. "We're close," he said. "But the temple's gate is sealed. There's only one way to open it now." Valoria narrowed her eyes. "What way?" He hesitated. Then Kalen stepped closer. "A bond. Between us." She frowned. "A bond?" He nodded. "A sharing of strength, blood, magic, soul. It's not just a ritual. It's a link. One that may last longer than either of us." Valoria took a step back. "You asked me to tie myself to a werewolf." "I ask you to survive," he said calmly. "This curse, it's not just changing you. It's trying to consume you. If we don't act now, you'll become something no one can stop." The fire crackled between them. Valoria's pride rose like smoke. She had ruled cities, fought wars, and broken kings. Never had she needed help. Never had she shared power. But now her hands shook, and her heart beat too fast. "Just one moon?" she asked softly. Kellen nodded. "One moon? That's all." She stared at him for a long time, then slowly removed her glove. Her pale fingers trembled. Kellen unsheathed the silver-edged dagger. Without a word, he drew it across his palm, then handed it to her. She did the same. They pressed their hands together. Heat surged through them both. Magic sparked in the air. The ground rumbled beneath them. And in the distance, the sealed gate of the Temple of Old Howls creaked open. Valoria gasped and pulled back. Their hands smoked slightly where they had touched. A mark now burned on her skin, shaped like a flame wrapped in a crescent moon. Kellen looked at it and whispered, "Now we're bound." Behind them, the red sky deepened. And from deep within the temple walls, something ancient stirred awake. The Temple of Old Howls stood silent and cold. Its stone walls were tall and worn by time, covered in frost and carved symbols too old to read. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and forgotten magic. Valoria walked slowly through the long halls, Kellen by her side, their footsteps echoing behind them. Torches lit themselves as they passed. Shadows moved along the cracked walls as if watching. Strange whispers danced in the corners, too soft to understand. Valoria felt something inside her grow restless, as though the temple itself knew who she was. They reached the central chamber, a round room with a sunken floor and a large symbol carved into the stone. It was a mix of wolf and bat, fire and moon. At its center was an ancient pedestal, holding a scroll sealed in silver. Kellen stepped forward. "This is the record of the first curse," he said quietly. "It tells how the vampire queen Nyxara was locked away and how she marked her return through blood." Valoria's eyes narrowed. "Nyxara? I thought she was only a myth." Kellen shook his head. "She was real. She tried to rule both wolves and vampires, turning them into slaves to her hunger. But it took both races together to stop her." Before she could answer, the loud crack echoed through the chamber. The floor shook. The torches went out. In the darkness, Valoria felt it, the sharp pull of something watching her from afar. Then came the howl. Not Kalen's, not any wolf she had ever heard. This one was twisted, cruel, ancient. Kalen pulled her back. "They found us. Run." They rushed through the temple halls, the shadows now alive behind them. Vampires, feral and wild-eyed, rushed from the dark, their eyes glowing red. These were not her kin. They were broken, mindless, touched by the same curse rising inside her. Valoria fought them off with fire and claw, her body faster now, stronger. But every strike left her colder. She was losing something, control. Kalen grabbed her wrist and pulled her through a narrow passage. They burst out of the temple into the snow-covered woods, breathless and bleeding. Behind them, the cursed vampires howled like animals, but did not follow. They could not leave the temple's boundary. Valoria collapsed against a tree. Her body trembled. "Why are they hunting me?" Kalen's voice was quiet but firm. "Because you carry Nyxara's mark. They'd feel it. And now so will others." She looked up at him. Her eyes, once proud and clear, were clouded. "The hunger is getting worse, Kalen. I don't know how much longer I can fight it." He knelt beside her. "Then we must finish what we started. The scroll holds answers. But we need time, and we don't have much." Far above them, the cursed moon began to rise again, red as blood and twice as large. The huntress was now the hunted. The journey back to Elderglen was colder than before. Snow fell in silence, covering the land in a soft white shroud. Valoria and Kellen moved quickly, staying off the main paths. Danger followed them now, too close to rest, too loud to ignore. Valoria was changing. Her skin had lost its pale glow, replaced by a faint shimmer of gray. Her eyes were darker, and sometimes when she spoke, her voice was not her own. Still, Kellen stayed by her side. He didn't look at her with fear, but with something harder to carry. Hope. "We need answers," Valoria said one evening, her breath misting in the cold air. "Real ones, not more stories and half-truths." Kellen nodded. "Then we go to the Crypt of Sighs." She frowned. "That place is cursed." "Exactly. No one dares enter it, which means what we need is still there." They traveled deep beneath Elderglen through secret tunnels that only Kalen's people remembered. At last, they stood before a heavy stone door, sealed with blood and bone carvings. Valoria reached forward, her cursed mark glowing faintly. The door opened. Inside was darkness. The Crypt of Sighs lived up to its name. The air moaned with old voices, and the walls were lined with coffins, some broken, some whispering. At the center of the crypt stood a large circular chamber. In its middle rested a stone table, and upon it lay a book bound in iron and dried roots. Kalen lit a torch. The flames danced, casting strange shadows on the walls. He opened the book carefully, reading the ancient language aloud. "It says, 'The altar wasn't made to grant power,'" he said slowly. "It was built as a prison, to hold Nyxara, the first vampire queen. She was sealed by a pact between wolves and vampires after she tried to consume both." Valoria stepped closer. "Then why did my blood wake her?" Kellen pointed to a passage. "Because she marked a bloodline before she fell. A silent curse, passed down through daughters, waiting for the right moment. You, Valoria, you're her final key." The words hit her like a blade. Her knees weakened. She gripped the edge of the table, her voice low. "I thought I was chosen. I thought I was strong." Kellen touched her shoulder gently. You are. But you're also in danger from others, and from what's inside you. Veloria looked at him, eyes shining. Can I stop it? He looked down at the book again. It says only one thing can stop the full return of Nyxera. A fire born of bond sealed by sacrifice. She understood the meaning. It was not just about rituals or magic. It was about choices, painful ones. Suddenly the walls trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deep laugh echoed from the crypt walls, low and cruel. Nyxera had awoken. The ground shook beneath their feet. From the walls of the crypt, red cracks began to appear, glowing like fire. The cold air turned hot. The ancient tombs groaned as if they, too, feared what was coming. Kalen grabbed Veloria's hand and pulled her back from the stone table. She's not just waking, he said, eyes wide. She's rising. A deep voice echoed around them. It was female, but not like any voice they had ever heard. It was layered, as though many spoke at once. So long have I waited, bound by cowards, sealed by liars. And now, my blood calls me home. Veloria gasped. The voice spoke through her. Her mouth moved, but the words were not hers. Kalen held her tighter. Fight it, Veloria. Stay with me. She shook, falling to her knees. Visions flashed before her eyes. Cities burning, wolves crying in chains, vampires with black eyes tearing into their own kin. In the middle of it all stood Nyxera, tall and terrifying, her beauty cold and cruel. Kalen raised his blade, ready to defend her if needed. But Veloria did something unexpected. She whispered, "No." The fire in the walls paused. The voice stopped. Veloria stood slowly, eyes glowing but stilled her own. "You will not use me," she said to the empty air. "I am not your vessel." But Nyxera laughed again, this time louder. "You already opened the door, little flame. You drank the curse. You bound yourself to the wolf. And soon, your body will be mine." Suddenly, a pulse of red energy threw Kalen and Veloria across the chamber. The stone table cracked in half. From beneath it, something rose, a figure wrapped in shadows and smoke, with eyes like dying stars. Nyxera had taken form. Not fully flesh, not yet, but enough to spread her curse across the land. Kalen pulled Veloria to her feet. "We have to get out. Now." They ran through the crumbling halls of the crypt as stone blocks fell around them. The whispers grew louder, screaming now, begging to be released. The entire place was falling apart. As they burst into the cold night above, the sky had changed. The moon was larger than before, deep red and pulsing like a heart. Trees bent in the wind as if bowing. Animals fled into the distance. The very air trembled. Kalen turned to her, breath heavy. "We're out of time. She's no longer trapped. She's growing stronger by the hour." Veloria looked at the cursed mark on her hand. It burned now, bright and painful. "Then we fight her, before she becomes whole." Kalen nodded, but there was worry in his eyes. "We'll need more than courage." In the far distance, a howl echoed, not from a wolf, but from something far older. The night was no longer safe. The Queen of Hunger had returned. The vampire triumph ruled from the floating city of Valereach, a place high above the clouds, built of white stone and magic. They were the three oldest vampires still living. Lord Therian, Lady Meyer, and Archmage Velrix. Cold, wise, and powerful, they claimed to protect vampirikind from threats both old and new. Veloria had once trained under Lady Meyer. She knew the rules of the Trian well. Never bring danger to the council's gates, but this time she had no choice. Kalen and Veloria arrived in secret, cloaked in illusion spells. The guards didn't notice them. Kalen's magic saw to that. When they stepped into the great hall of mirrors, the Trium were already waiting. "You should not have come here," Lord Therian said. His eyes were pale as bone. "You carry the scent of corruption." Veloria stood tall. "Nyxera has returned. She's rising through me, and if we don't act, she will take us all." Lady Meyer tilted her head, curious. "You expect us to believe a werewolf's tale?" Kellen stepped forward. I was there when the altar was awakened. I watched her change. The signs are all around you, your own shadows tremble. Velrix the Archmage stroked his long silver beard. We felt the shift in magic. But tell us, child, why should we help you, when you brought this curse back yourself? Veloria took a breath. Because I want to stop it. I will give everything I have. Just tell us how to seal her again. The Tryon exchanged silent glances. Then Therion spoke. There may be a way. The old scrolls speak of a second prison. A ritual of flame and bond performed at the Spire of Morning. But it requires a sacrifice. She nodded. I'm ready. But she should not have trusted them. As soon as the Tryon gave the location, guards flooded the room. Chains of shadow magic wrapped around Kalen and pulled him to the ground. Veloria cried out, fighting back, but her strength faded fast. The mark on her hand flared with pain. Lady Mir stepped close. You are no longer one of us. You're a danger to all vampirikind. We will offer you to Nyxera and take her power for ourselves. You said you wanted to stop her. Veloria shouted. Velrix smiled coldly. We want to rule her. In that moment, betrayal burned deeper than any wound. Kalen, chained and bloody, looked up at her. They'll kill us both. But Veloria's fire wasn't gone, it was only hidden. She closed her eyes and whispered the words Kalen once taught her. An ancient werewolf chant tied to the blood pact between them. Her mark exploded with light. Chains chattered. Guards screamed. The hall cracked with thunder. Veloria stood, her eyes blazing like a storm. I am not your tool, she said, and I am not hers. She grabbed Kalen and together they vanished into smoke and flame. Behind them the Tryon screamed, not in anger, but in fear. The Spire of Morning stood alone in the middle of a black valley, tall, sharp, and covered in old runes. It was a place of endings, where ancient oaths were once sealed with blood. Now it was quiet. Too quiet. Kalen and Veloria stood at its base, the wind cold against their faces. Behind them, the sky burned red. Nyxera's power had spread across the land. Forests had withered. Rivers had dried. Feral vampires ran wild, and even the wolves had started to turn mad under the cursed moon. We're running out of time, Kalen said, holding her hand. She's almost fully awakened. Veloria looked up at the spire. Her face was tired but strong. Then this is where we stop her. Inside, the tower walls pulsed with strange light. At the top was a round chamber open to the sky. A circle of stone, old as the world, waited in the center. It was there the ritual would happen. Veloria stepped into the circle. Her curse mark glowed brighter with every step. She's inside me, Kalen, she said quietly. I feel her fighting. If she takes over now, she'll use my body to finish what she started. Kalen stepped beside her. Then we don't let that happen. She turned to them. You know what this means. The fire needs fuel. The bond needs blood. He nodded. One of us may not leave this place. Silence filled the chamber. Then Veloria placed her hand on his chest. You gave me a reason to fight, not as a vampire, not as a cursed soul, but as something more. Kalen touched her face gently. And you gave me hope in a world that feared us both. They kissed, soft but full of meaning. Then, with a deep breath, they began the ritual. Veloria raised her hand and fire circled the chamber. Kalen howled, calling on the ancient strength of his kind. Their bond pulsed between them like a heartbeat. The mark on Veloria's hand burned like a star. Nyxera's voice screamed from within her. No, I was born to rule. You are mine. But Veloria's voice rose louder. I am not yours. At the peak of the ritual, Kalen stepped forward and took her wrist. Let me carry the pain. No, she said, voice shaking. We carry it together. And with one final breath, she bit his neck, not to harm, but to seal the bond fully. Their blood mixed in the circle of stone. Light burst into the sky so bright it cut through the red clouds. Nyxera shrieked, and then was gone. The cursed moon cracked and faded. The wind slowed. The madness in the world began to lift. When the light faded, Valoria lay still in Kaelin's arms, her mark gone. But her eyes opened, free, clear, human again. "You stayed," she whispered. Kaelin smiled, weak but alive. "Always." And from that moment on, legends told of the vampire who found her soul, and the werewolf who gave her the strength to keep it.